press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Namaste and welcome to this Wednesday 10 p.m. live, which has become an India-US dialogue of late. In fact, I think this is the seventh or eighth week that continuously we are having Shri Vibhuti ji on a Wednesday. Welcome, Vibhuti ji.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and making me part of Jaipur Dialogues.
And today we have two new things. The first one, of course, the first one you can see on my background, but we have now a Jaipur Dialogues backdrop, a digital backdrop of Jaipur Dialogues. And second is that the Bar Council of Rajasthan has very kindly admitted me on its roles as an advocate.
बधाई हो, दोनों के लिए ही बधाई हो आपको.
तो इसलिए लोग कह रहे थे अभी कमेंट्स आ रहे थे कि करेला जो है वो नीम पे चढ़ गया है. So, on that note, let us start the good topic of India-US relations. Right. And I remember probably right in the first dialogue that we had on Trump re-election bid, and you had said something very, very profound, and that I kept repeating, I think, throughout our dialogues. And that was that the elections are won by either the Democrat fringe or the Republican fringe. But in both of them, there is a Republican and there is a Republican Democrat. And there is a Democrat Republican and there is a Democrat. And the Democrat and the Republican are responsible for the victory or the defeat. But in the end, it is the Republican Democrat and Democrat Republican who run the USA. And nothing can be more true than what we see Biden's behavior and Biden's appointment picks today. And the way he seems to be, I won't say sidelining, but it doesn't seem to be really mainstreaming the far leftist or even the leftist narrative into the way he is functioning. What is your take on that?
Well, you have put the notice on the top, Biden will be good for India. And it has created quite a furor of its own on social media because of the fact that Biden has clear liking for China, and Pakistan lobbies have worked very hard with him. So there is a definite school of thought that believes that Biden will not be good for India. However, as international operators, dealing with international situations, we know the old saying: there is no permanent friend and there is no permanent enemy in international relationship. It is always the opportunity that defines the relationship going forward. So the two issues which are very important here, and Biden will remain extremely busy handling the domestic challenges that he has. And with his tiny accident in which he had a hairline fracture, I had used the phrase that he is a managed presidency. He has a managed presidency. And now he will be even more closely watched because he shouldn't trip and fall and hurt the presidency again. Because now his every move will be watched. So the minor trot that he used to do on the stage to show that he was physically fit will be under suspect right now because he can't move without the permission of the people who care for him, right? Or they care for his office. So what is Biden's legacy? That is important here. So, what is important is, as we know, we take the support of every group that allows you to win an election. But right. After you come to power, then the ground realities hit hard. And that's the important part that, Biden cannot ignore. India's important role in the region, Indo-Pacific region, and India's historical relationship with the United States, which has been love-hate, strategic, lovey-dovey and angry, all of it at the same time. So it's a kind of a khichdi relationship India has with America, and America has with India. So, I have always told people that matter that India's relationship with the US will improve the day United States takes a determined stand on its own relationship with Pakistan and China. If you are not able to fix the relationship with India's enemies and you want to be cozy with them, then don't expect India to turn warm and cozy with you. It's not going to happen. And that's the absolute challenge. But the bigger challenge here is now the ground reality that United States has replaced China as the largest trading partner of India. That fact cannot be ignored because it's the economy and economic decisions that drive a relationship. And India, by opening up its economy and the bonhomie that happened between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump, has really enhanced the engagement on the economic front dramatically. So as even today, the foreign portfolio investments are rising, which is what is going from here. So that is a fact that United States or Biden will not afford to forget, and that is something which is very important. But I always say one thing, Sanjay ji, that this is the moment for India to seize the initiative and start driving the narrative, which we generally are weak at, despite our intelligence, knowledge, wisdom, and everything else. We are not very savvy in marketing our position in relation to US requirement. And that's what is important. It doesn't mean you abandon your old friends, not at all. It's you redefine your new relationships. And that's very important, which is what US is looking towards India. So regardless of what Biden may think about China and Pakistan, he cannot ignore India. That's an undeniable fact. And the establishment, the military establishment that is selling so much of military hardware to India will take into account and will play a role. So Biden will be good for India or not. I believe, in my opinion, I'm willing to make this controversial, strong statement. It's for India to decide. Biden has no time for India. Biden has no time for anything. He has little time for managing his own legacy as president. And there are enough problems on hand. Now, you addressed also the second part, was the leftist socialist agenda of the US government under Biden. Biden, even during debate with Trump, when he was told that he will be the AOC, he has embraced Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's agenda and AOC agenda. He said, I am my own president. I beat them at the debate. I have won it now. It's my presidency. So to what extent will he rely upon that? One doesn't know, because he hasn't taken any Sanders or Elizabeth Warren favorites in his cabinet yet.
No, I don't know.
But he has brought in Obama presidency in his cabinet appointment. So the question is, and I think everybody in the Indian administration has dealt with them in the past. So there is a situation, there is always, whether it's Mr. Pilkin or anybody, Mr. Jaishankar knows them. They have dealt with them. So it's not an unknown quantity or a mysterious entity that has landed suddenly there. We have dealt with those situations, and I'm 100% sure that India under Modi and India under Mr. Jaishankar are savvy enough to deal with this scenario as well. It may not be as warm and and smooth as under Trump with Secretary Pompeo, but it may not get affected adversely. And for that, we need to stand up and we need to seize the moment to drive that initiative. And I have one favorite thing of mine, which I'll keep narrating it and saying it here and everywhere, that if Biden or his administration or his lackeys from Pakistan lobby or China lobby talk about India's internal affairs and India's human rights issue, India must boldly, bluntly, and frankly tell them, fix the human rights issues in those two countries, then come and talk with us. Because we are a democracy, the largest democracy in the world, who have proven ourselves to be successful as a democratic country in many number of times. Don't belittle us and don't weaken us, because by weakening us, you weaken yourself. We need to make that statement very forcefully.
You're quite right. Actually, if you look at the way politics goes, then all the various slogans that are chanted and shouted at the uh, big meetings, for instance, even if you take the India example and all the great noises that are made at the election time, for all that, if you look at even Mr. Modi's record, you'll find that a lot of this trad group in the uh, Hindu category, the traditionalists, they are mighty disappointed with Mr. Modi. Okay, because they have their own agenda and they thought that they are the ones who wished for him and they elected him, and he is not really taking up the issues that are very dear to their heart, because ultimately the politics is the politics of the middle way, and the controversial issues are taken only right at the end. So Biden, having spent 47 years uh, in and around the Capitol Hill, I don't think he's the type who will go get into those controversial issues at all. And the same thing when you say that, okay, he might have been close to China, just as Trump was close to Russia. But he couldn't go against the establishment. Even somebody like Trump, who is so strong minded, so strong headed, he could do nothing. In fact, he had to impose sanctions on Russia. And I don't think Biden, being Biden, the quintessential establishment guy, is going to move an inch away from the establishment line. And that's what is reflected in all his picks. And what is disappointing the far left and the radicals among the Democrats, as exactly as you said, that there are no recommendees of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and no George Soros type getting into his administration till now.
Very true. The other part is that the upcoming runoff elections for 2 Senate positions in Georgia, there are many people in the Democratic Party itself that who are championing that we have to move away from the socialist arguments, otherwise we will lose, because the socialist argument will not work in the American context, at least till now. It may have a popular appeal, but that's where it stops being so. Because the United States is a country where it is always the performance that matters. Whether you take Kobe Bryant in basketball or Michael Jordan, look at the black people in America. You always admire them from that point of view, that they performed, excelled to be what they are. They did not seek arakshan. That's the important part of this country, that they are multimillionaires, and many black athletes are multimillionaires today by virtue of their performance, not reservation. And, I totally agree with that part, that Mr. Modi's supporters, I think, need to be having, in all seriousness, some consideration for the steps that he's taking, the way he's taking it. He has inherited a serious problem on hand. So, I'm unhappy that he has not freed temples yet, right? We have talked about that in the past. He has not taken strong pro-Hindu steps that most of the Hindus wanted him to take, because that he is the last hope. He is the last hope until somebody comes in as strong as he is, if not stronger. So India needs a change of the kind that, I'm surprised, for that matter, that he was the one who had asked the Congress government to change Ahmedabad to Karnavati, and he is not doing it yet. But Yogi Adityanath he's taking those popular, unpopular, call it any which way you want, the steps to change names and bring about effective change. But coming back to Biden's scenario again, I will repeat this forever, that this is the moment for India to make its own demands. And one of the things that I always talk about is that, having established the economic prominence in the US life right now, there are, for example, I was very happy to know that my adopted home in Pune, for example, I'm a Bihari, I lived in Pune for my education. Pune used the municipal bond concept to raise funds for its own municipality. So this is the time where, on the economic front, I'm of the opinion that India must ask US, how did you build all these bridges and roads without the financial instruments available hundreds of years ago? How did you design that? How did you build? There were decisions taken, right? Today we are living in a fintech environment where you can create money where none exists. So from that point of view, if India asks United States, teach us about your municipal bond schemes, because every municipality, every county has its own municipal bond. That's the function of major money raising for local development. And you can then decentralize financial decision making from center to the states and create the responsibility of the locals to raise funds for its own community. So I'm 100% sure that Pune people will invest in Pune road building, improving the infrastructure, improving the sanitation for Pune. But a Tamilian or a Bihari will invest in that bond only if that bond yields attractive returns. So you see how the economic function can play a role, and that intellectual relationship that you establish with the financial market, given the fintech environment that has come about, we need to take advantage of technology, the digital technology, intellectual property issues, and how do we create that opportunity? That's what US will be very happy to share with you. Apart from military technology and military things, if we involve the United States in the financial turnaround of the country, that's what will make. And one of the classic examples, my favorite example, is handling the non-performing asset issue in India. Because I am very familiar with this, because I dealt with this matter 12 years ago when I came to India and talked about it. Think about it like this. Capital requires efficiency and effectiveness both at the same time. And our banking system was never designed to be capital efficient or effective. They were supposed to do a job of XY lending or Y lending, depending on how the political pressures were defined. So you sympathize, as a banker, I sympathize with my banking colleagues in the public sector banks. But today, because of the fintech and the revolution that is happening in the financial world, if the Indian banks do not come up high and do not match with that expectation, then India will suffer. And that is one relationship that can work wonders for India and the US in terms of sharing the financial mind and the opportunity that exists. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, where money plays the game. It's the money that makes the world go round.
Yes, yeah, that's right. It's the money that makes the world go round, and the economic relationship is so very important. But as far as the US is concerned, some of the important driving forces are the defense establishment and the State Department establishment. In fact, when we say establishment, it's usually these two which run the so-called establishment, quote unquote. So the defense establishment, we know now, and I think have known for some time, that the defense establishment was pretty unhappy with Mr. Trump. And for all his strongman image, he actually used that strength to bring peace and to take America out of all the major wars. In fact, not a single war was started by him. And even the old wars that were going on, he tried to come out of them, notably Afghanistan.
Right.
And he did go big on Iran, but even there he did not start a war. He wound down on all the old wars that were going on in the Middle East. So I am told, and I think it is there in a number of press editorial pages in the US as well, that the military establishment was pretty unhappy with Mr. Trump. And the only good thing that the military establishment liked was the move against China by having this Indo-Pacific strategy in place. So I think that Indo-Pacific strategy is not going away in a hurry because Mr. Biden is an establishment man and he's likely to cooperate with the military establishment. And ditto with the State Department because this 2+2 business was started by Obama, if you remember.
Right.
So let's look at this from the perspective of these two important factors.
Absolutely correct. Because one thing which I would say that defense establishment, Mr. Trump made many groups unhappy despite doing the right thing. So, for example, the US population wanted no more wars. They want their soldiers back. And he began to fulfill those promises that he had made in his election campaign. He did not wage a single war on his dime. On the contrary, as you rightly said, he won down the wars. But the defense establishment he strengthened as well by improving the budget. And he did make America defense really strong. So much so that on many campaign trails and otherwise, he had said that I have made the military so strong that I hope we never have to use our military strength on any war because the enemy beware, because we will crush them. He also created a space army. So the point is that he did the right things, but he was very uncaring of the sentiments of the establishment of that kind. So while India-US defense cooperations went up, there were no wars. So you can have the most sophisticated weapon. If you have not tested in the battlefield, it doesn't mean anything, right?
And the military establishment loves its wars.
The military establishment loves the war because that's what keeps them glowing in the eyes of the public and in the global arena when you have the muscle. Nobody talks about the Russian muscle anymore. They are definitely worried about the Chinese muscle now. So as you very rightly said, the Indo-Pacific and these things will be in place. Whether Biden will wage another war, I doubt it, because economic imperatives are against the United States right now to wage a war. Because the US economy, interestingly enough, under Trump has again hit 30,000 milestone in the Dow Jones Index. So the economy under Trump did well. Military wars didn't happen. So US should actually be celebrating all of it. But in reality, it doesn't serve everybody's purpose. So military establishment will look at opportunities where there is a war. Insofar as the State Department is concerned, Trump had brought about, he wanted to curb America's participation all over the world. Military establishment, policing, why do I have to? I mean, he made a famous statement that why are we there in Middle East? These tribals people have been fighting their wars for thousands of years. We can't solve their problem if they are not interested in solving their problem. That was a doctrinary approach, and bringing about rapprochement between Israel and some of the Middle East countries, UAE and Bahrain and Sudan. That was pretty remarkable. So if you are going to have a world peace and the military establishment gets weakened, what am I building the war weapons for? So, you have a very interesting dilemma here for Mr. Biden. How is he going to keep the military establishment happy? And military will not be happy if there are no wars. But you can't fight war because you are running at trillions and trillions of dollars of, post-corona economy in which you can't spend money on war, ignoring the domestic economy. And that's Biden's challenge. As I have said, that his legacy will be determined whether on his watch there is a war or there is more peace. I think that globally people don't want wars anymore. So the military establishment has to change. So, for example, I remember there was a military defense secretary under George Bush. I forget his name. He was very brash. And he had said that we don't need physical soldiers anymore because we have enough capacity to destroy any nation through our electronic and many other means. He was the one who reduced the troops in American military. But subsequently, that was raised to meet the requirements. So that's a very important, but for Indian point of view, to get into the play, we have to learn the positioning of terrorism as a mainstream item. Because terrorism at a local level, there is no terrorism as a war issue between ISIS and others. But terrorism as an ideological scenario exists. And with coronavirus, we know that the terrorists can use suitcase viruses to destroy a city or the spread the virus as a new weapon. So India has to mainstream this conversation with the United States that just as one coronavirus, Wuhan virus, destabilized the whole economy, the countries, the global scenario, we have to worry about how a terrorist will use these bioweapons now. Forget about nuclear. The bios are more dangerous than anything else right now. If in the nuclear part, if I know that you are going to launch a nuclear thing, I might be able to stop you. But bio, so much more difficult, to do that. This is new. So we have to learn the art and the craft of putting the terrorism, which is definitely ideological driven, into the mainstream conversation. That's very important for India. And that's something which Biden has to take cognizance of whenever it begins to pander to the Islamist lobby or the Pakistani lobby in its administration. So there is a lot of things are happening, a lot of things remain the same. So, I am of the opinion that it is that moment for India that every Indian begins to get engaged and involved, Indian government, to set their narrative and make their line that this is what we want. It's very important for India to define what we want and build the narrative on that account.
All right, now let's talk about the economy, how the US economy is going to, whether it's going to take off or it is going to stall. Because the fear has always been that these people are going to raise taxes and they are going to kill the entrepreneurial spirit. And it was, in fact, the high taxes was one reason that drove the entire American manufacturing to China.
Right.
I think that was a very, very important factor. They negotiated with China. And in fact, this is something that I've always flagged, that for all the love for democracy that the Americans have and for all the exaltation of the democratic process and the democratic values that they talk about, for all the individual rights, they outsourced their entire manufacturing to a country which had none of these values. So actually, while they talked big about it, internally, they thought that this was really, this was not really doing good for their profits or for their capitalistic instincts. So they settled for a country. They lifted their factories lock, stock, and barrel and implanted them in China, where they had no individual rights, they had no labor laws, they had exploitation of prison labor, and every other value that you had a complete contrast available there. And in spite of that, you settled for that, just because you were quite sick of the American system, where you had to negotiate with all the various lobbies all the time to get by. So you settled for the easier option, and now you're paying for it. So I hope that kind of the raising of taxes does not deter that American manufacturing coming back in the wake of Corona and in the wake of the disengagement that is happening with China.
That's a very important point, which is in the life of the US economy, it has been that kind of a decision making, because 90% of the US economy is in private hands, is in the private sector. And United States totally understands and knows, they have come to understand right in the beginning, that democracy is a good governance mechanism. It's not the best of economic decision making and economic life. Because in democracy, as you both of us know, and most of the people know, that you have the rule of checks and balances, executive, judiciary, and legislature, right? And then you have the fourth column called the press and the media. The point of the matter here is very important. Knowing fully well that democracy will be the tool to call governance, business can be in the private sector. And business drives itself on efficiency, effectiveness, and profitability. Now, where do you match these two things? So, for example, for US businesses, dealing with democracy was literally a pain in wherever you choose to describe it. So, dealing with democracy is tough. Look at India itself. Why did I remember a day in New York in the US consulate, Indian consulate here, the economic council on that day, and we were having a conversation. In China's US deficit with China had hit $42 billion. And American businesses were asking, why don't you take at least 10% of what is going to China? Because we will be able to divert and create opportunities in China, in India. It will lead to significant economic growth in India because that's what you can absorb at this point in time. Nobody cared in India to be able to take that 10% that America was willing to offer. And this is the sad part of geopolitical reality. It's easier to deal business with somebody there is a decision-making point. That's how we also liberalized single window clearances, didn't we? We
Yes.
created single window clearances for so many investment opportunities. But eventually, the disclosures, the parliamentary inquiries, the hearings made people say, oh, come on, India is a bureaucratic country. Not realizing America itself is a hugely rule-based economy. It's easy to start a business here because you are in private sector, nobody asks you a question. But if you were to violate a climate mandate or one EPA mandate here, you can get into trouble. But that's the important part. Yes, you are absolutely right. And that's something which Americans also don't like, that we take economic decisions based on our, profit motive, but we let the governance be on the democratic side. We ignore the democratic nations and end up dealing with military dictatorships. That has been the bane of American politicians. They have no satisfactory answer at the political level. At the business level, yes. So today, that's what I keep repeating, and I will say it again. It's for India to define what we want. So on the economic front, everyone talking about economic collaboration, we need to firm up our intellectual property rights, for that matter. We have to recognize, where does American business want to come in? I mean, for example, I laughed personally that Harley Davidson for Trump was a major prestige issue. Come on, give me a break. I mean, I was saying that if India had to accept Harley Davidson, it had to play the game smartly, rather than just saying we have enough motorcycles of our own. So there are some times when economic decision making also has a major ego and political motivation. You need to learn how to play the game. And I will repeat again, India needs to define itself. What do we need? And I think India must open up on financial collaboration with America a lot more. Because I studied the system here, and I kept wondering that where were these financial instruments when they built the roads, when they laid down their infrastructure, when they developed the entire country, how they divided the country in squares and rectangles so that Sanjay, Dixit, house number X, street number Y, and the zip code, that's the address all over the country. How the mind worked in terms of creating an ease of doing business. So we are fumbling, we are struggling, we have adopted socialist measure, we are trying to be capitalist, we have labor issues. So India thus becomes a difficult country to do business despite having all the opportunity. So take the farmers' bill case that is happening. Even President Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, made the foolish statement of interfering in Indian affairs, not realizing that freedom of speech is not freedom to express in coherent matters. So that's what I'm trying to say, that we have to tell them this far and no further. That's my pet theme these days. I use the concept of Lakshman Rekha in defining relationship. You use this entire thing by defining this far and no further. This concept was used in the movie Enter the Dragon. When John Saxon tells the drug dealer, there is a point I won't go beyond. I may be a thug and a thief in my business dealings, but there is a point I won't go beyond. And that's the point. We have to define the line for that. India.
Quite right. The Lakshman Rekha point,
Yes.
or the Rubicon, as the Romans used to say.
Correct.
Okay, 2 points that come out of this. Of course, you mentioned Trudeau, which is, of course, there's a interesting spectacle of Trudeau supporting the farmers here and opposing the MSP and subsidy regime in the WTO. So, poor Trudeau, of course. I mean, I don't blame him. He's too much of a honey chocolate kind of a leader, and he got the right treatment when he came to India.
Yes.
You remember how
I do.
the Indians treated him? They gave him the the proverbial cold shoulder, and it wasn't just a cold shoulder. I think it was a super cold shoulder.
And he deserved it. He deserved it. Absolutely, every inch of it, he deserved it.
And the second point that comes out is about this: the businesses having found out that it was good to deal with China, but ultimately they got ripped off by China. They got ripped off of their intellectual property. Almost all their intellectual property was stolen, and they were subjected to strong arm tactics.
Right.
And they could still make some profits, but then they made profits at the cost of not just their self-respect, but at the cost of their intellectual property rights. And that made China rich, not only in terms of foreign exchange and export earnings, but also in terms of intellectual capital.
Right.
And that was, I would say, that was the real drain from the from the American economy. Right. And that is something that cannot be really weighed in terms of just plain dollars.
You are absolutely right. And I can tell you that the number of medium and small businesses that used to manufacture in China, they are not going back. It's like the post, that we discuss pre-war economy and a post-World War economy. World between First World, Second World War, and whatever pre and post. Economic analysis and needs will be now driven by post-corona, pre-corona scenario. And China at the moment is the most disliked nation in the world. The only reason they understood the geopolitical game extremely well, because when United States and the Pope colluded to bring down the famous USSR, China knew that China will be the next target. And therefore, they offered their cheap labor. They they embraced the manufacturing requirement. They understood that profit matters and let's lure them in. And Chinese lured them in. Today, the number of mid and small size companies that have suffered because of the tariff war and whatever, Biden will not be able to reverse that trend. Because I, as a manufacturer, am not going back to China. I know stories of many manufacturing companies to protect their intellectual property and the patents. They used to outsource manufacturing to 5 different companies in China, bring back here, assemble and sell. Now, because of the tariff war and post-corona scenario, because of their killer contract and the Chinese behavior, these guys are not going back. वो दूध का जला मट्ठा भी फूंक के पीते हैं ना, वो हाल हो गया है इनका भी. So American businesses small, they are now very assured, I'm better off having 2 paise less on my profit than to surrender our freedom and our businesses to China. Because Chinese are very ruthless in terms of the business dealings. They are totally ruthless. They have no consideration for human values. If they had consideration for human values, they won't be committing atrocities that they commit on their own people. So I'm not a pro-China guy. I'm of the opinion that United States has learned its lesson. Biden also will have to be careful about China because sentiment is not pro-China anymore anywhere in the world. Just as the sentiment is all against terror and terrorism, whether it's ideological. Look at President Macron in France. How he has risen up, whether he did it for political considerations or pure hatred or dislike, that it's time for me to stand up, that is what is going to happen. And India has a big role to play in it, because all the Asian countries are looking at India to provide the leadership in the Indo-Pacific region. Otherwise, India will surrender its stand. As I have often said this in my speeches and talks, that India has the unique technology advantage. We take advantage of the tectonic shifts brought about by technology, or we will go back to the bullock carts again. That's the important part for India to embrace. And that's what I see, that the financial instruments will play a great role in India's economic upswing. How to raise money. That's the important part. So for a state, the political system, that is very important to do.
Okay, quite right. And now, before we move into the question and answer round, I will just make two brief interventions with Vibhuti ji. And before that, I would like to request all my viewers to please like, share, subscribe the video, press the bell icon, and of course, your contributions are important. Always remember. So, Vibhuti ji, you're right on the money there as far as the economy is concerned, because you are the financial expert out there. Well, two things, then we move into question answer rounds. How will the Iranian situation shape up? One. And second, will Biden actually withdraw from Afghanistan because the military leadership doesn't want to?
I will answer the Afghanistan question first. Very simple answer to that. I don't think Biden will withdraw from Afghanistan, because non-withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan also helps Pakistan. So there will be trade-off in conversations. There will be, because that assures that India will not have any role to play. That's where it is important. I keep saying India has to define itself, what it wants. So Biden will not be able to pull back from Afghanistan, and he will maintain the status quo in the name of peace, in the name of tranquility, to put it mildly. Insofar as Iran is concerned, it's a problem. It's a problem, one which is of a very interesting kind. In my opinion, I believe that all the overtures Obama made to Iran was to cut Saudi Arabia to size. Because Saudi Arabia under Bush were very, very dominant in the US relationship. US will not move in Middle East until it talks with Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi Arabia virtually controlled the US dialogue in Middle East matters. Obama wanted to cut that. That's why he entered into a deal with the Shia Iran. I mean, all the gameplay much better. So that's where it all happened. That's why the deals were done. That's why the non-nuclear part of it done. Think about it like this. The entire CIA story on weapons of mass destruction, all the pictures and all the intelligence information, all the factories were located in Iran, but they pointed it out in Iraq and bombed the crap out of Iraq, had a war to destroy Iraq. So the question here is that how these people played that role. Everything was in Iran. And that's where the role is important. Iran, he will try to maintain the status quo there so that Iran doesn't get the nuclear weapon. So think about it from this point of view. Democrat and Republican, Trump and Biden, they both have the same objective. We cannot allow Iran to have the nuclear weapon. The path they take, they are different. Trump pulled out of the agreement. Biden may get back into agreement. So what will happen, one doesn't know. How the whole thing will shape up is whether the US will accept the new relationship that is going on between Israel and Saudi Arabia, because Israel also wants to reduce its dependence on America. That's a very important part to know, because Democratic Party is the one that has somewhere along the line fallen on the side of the Palestinians and Middle East because of many tendencies in the Democratic Party of many pro-Middle East, pro-Islamic people in the Democratic Party, and I don't need to name them. There are many who have begun to question U.S. relationship with Israel at the expense of billions in Middle East. That's a very important thing to remember. And to that end, the whole goal is the same: to not allow Iran to become a nuclear power. Democrats chose the participation, Trump chose the pullback. So, this is a matter of semantics. So Iran will not be allowed to have those gesturing will continue. How it will shape up, of course, Iran also seemingly played a role in the technology of the Dominican software companies. Reportedly, China and Iran played a role in there too. So Biden will be happy Iran played a role. They will come to extract their pound of flesh at some point in time.
While I ask you a supplementary on this, I request all my viewers to please fire your questions. We don't have enough questions today, which is a surprise. I think people don't like Biden so much. Don't worry, we have to work with Biden if it comes to that. Though, of course, a lot of people are still hoping that Trump manages to win through the legal route. But we have to go by what we have in front of us. So please fire in your questions. And I just have a supplementary on this take that you had on the Middle East politics. You're quite right that Israel also doesn't want to keep all its eggs in the US basket alone. Though I think the Jewish lobby has probably a greater hold on the Democrats than it has on the Republicans. Look at George Soros. He's a Jew. Dyed in the wool Jew. Right. But he is very much on the Democratic side. Saudi and Israel, or rather the Arabs and the Israel getting together, I think it is solely due to Iran. And Iranians, they do not know how to play the international game well, because they are ideologically driven, and they are the lesser child of Islam, so they are always trying to assert and get out of their little inferiority complex that they have. And so they try to be holier than thou.
Right.
And they try to be more loyal to Muhammad and to Allah than the Arabs. That's what they're trying all the time. I mean, even today, look at the situation in Iran. By tradition and by diktat, by Islamic diktat, their supreme leader has to be an Arab. Just imagine.
Right.
That Kali Pagdi in Iran denotes Arabic descent.
Right.
So the racism is so deeply ingrained in both the Sunni and the Shia society. You can have a look even in the Indian society, where the racism is ingrained in the manner of what is called the Sayyid Sheikh category. That is what we call the Sharif log, Ashraf, and the lesser beings. So that racism is so deeply ingrained. But while Saudi Arabia was always having a tango with the US and largely following their lines, and as MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, accepted that even the fundamentalist explosion and the funding of all the radical Islam all over the world was done at the instance of the US. That's what he said. And it made sense in the context in which he said that. But Iranians have put ideology over common sense, and that's what is fundamentally changing the Middle East. And that is what is driving Arab and Israel together. And that may actually take away the jobs of many people in the United States.
You've said it very well. That's right.
So, lots of jobs at stakes in the United States.
Right.
But I don't think they have the wherewithal to put the clock back. What do you say?
Now, it is difficult to do that. Think about it like this, that even Obama, who talked about closing Guantanamo, could not in 8 years. So there are certain imperatives that drive the decision making, and if certain decisions are taken, you can't take a U-turn. Trump could do of getting out of Paris Climate Accord. It's easy to get back into Paris Accord, but you cannot change the argument for or against climate change. You see the point which I'm trying to make. So the issues remain the same. How you approach is the bigger issue. And for example, I'll put it this way to you, for your audience to talk about, is the fact that, why I keep saying that defining India is important. Think about it like this, that a French economist in Wall Street Journal wrote and used the word, I quote here, Brahmin Privilege Rescue Act. What was he talking about? He was talking about Elizabeth Warren's program of student debt relief. And he defined it as Brahmin privilege, effort. Think about it. The Indians have to think about it. That particular phrase was quoted by somebody called Gilani or somebody. That is Brahmin Privilege Act. And I began to say that where did the word Brahmin come in here? What did the student debt relief have to do with the word Brahmin? You see how the people are attacking India in ways that we never thought of. That's the important part for us to know, that you have to begin to correct I have said this. If you notice, Sanjay ji, that even in the mainstream media, CNN, whatever channels are there, they use the word Guru, Pandit, Mantra, the three words which are very deep value for us, in a rather flippant manner with a negative connotation. The gurus and the pandits and the mantra is this. They are using our words, but they're using it in a negative connotation, belittling the importance that we attach to it. And that's what I mean by saying that we Indians have to begin to get engaged, in that manner, with redefining our scenarios. So Iran will come, Iran will go, they will handle their problem. Biden will be there. I sincerely believe, my belief is that Biden will be too busy managing his short legacy. He's not even thinking about second term. So Biden's narrative, how we take advantage of that, is up to us. We must not. And there's something very important I want to mention here to all Indian who are viewers and Indian Americans who are viewing here, that the people who make India's life difficult are the Democrats, Indians who are in Democratic Party. So whether it's Rokh Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, or Shama Sawant, they are the ones who try to embarrass India using the Democratic Party to ask questions. Americans don't care. We are not even in conversation with American media with our issues unless and until the Indians interfere that. So Rokh Khanna, likes of Rokh Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, and Shama Sawant, the municipal councillor there, raised the issue of passing resolutions. Money was given to pass the resolutions. So point is, we need to get active and to stop those people. None of the 5 congressmen, other than I think Raja Krishnamurthy, talked about 370 or 35 or CA, how it benefited the minorities in 3 specific countries. And India has to learn to manage its PR well. So while there is one state that is suffering, is reportedly unhappy with the farmers' bill, but rest of the India is cheering. The farmers is cheering the whole thing. How the marketing of it is done. So when farmers from Punjab say that we will not give up our agitation unless this particular thing is changed, we have to define that we don't deal with bullies.
Right. Absolutely.
just as America has said that we don't deal with terrorists, I will make a deal outside the purview of the official negotiation, but officially I'm not dealing with you. Likewise, Modi government needs to say threats don't work. You have to begin to establish that benchmark, or else what happens is every group begins to pull its own weight.
I know.
Withdraw kar lenge.
In fact, in my long administrative experience, I've seen this. If you appease one group, then there will be 10 more groups competing for appeasement. So thing is happening. What you see today happening on the highways outside Delhi, the siege that is being laid around Delhi, it has happened because Shaheen Bagh was not dealt with in a decisive manner.
Correct.
So they have actually taken the cue from there, and that is why it is happening. If they had,
I will also add here, Sanjay ji, that Biden's strategy of 2020 of winning the election will reach India in 2024 even a far more vicious way.
I know, but they won't be able to. They won't be able to manage the ballots.
They will not be able to manage the ballots, but they will be able to do multiple Shaheen Baghs. Because every effort that you will take will be given a political twist to that.
I know, but the Indian public reacts differently.
Yes,
and it's not as if they did not attempt it in 2019.
Yes.
They did in many different ways. They did light up many fires, and of course, that those fires resulted in many more pyres. All that happened, but there's a limit beyond which the Indian public reacts very differently. That our
totally
our value system, our worldview is universal, homogeneous, and what is called multi-valued.
Right.
And we live in infinites. The US lives in binaries. In a binary situation, it's easier to light these fires and get those reactions.
Right.
Indian public reacts.
India has been reacting very strongly, and it is good sign. And but the important part is that we have to be cautious all through. We don't need to forgive our enemy like Prithviraj Chauhan did any number of times. And we have to take advantage of it.
That mustn't happen. That mustn't happen. I defined the 5 traitors today in one of my 10-minute capsules. I don't know whether you saw them.
I saw that.
and the first one was just imagine a Vijayanagar empire, such a powerful empire, having 2 of its major cavalry units run by Jilani brothers.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Absolutely.
And they turned a winning battle into a losing one by defecting at a crucial moment.
Right.
So these are the kind of foolish things we have been doing all through the ages. We mustn't do that anymore. We must learn from that history. Anyway, I think let's move to the question and answer rounds.
Sure.
And I must remind my viewers that we have to also wait for December 6th, because on December 6th, we are going to have a cracker of a show at 1 p.m. to celebrate a very important event that happened on 6th December. And it happened, actually, the beginning, the first structure went down at a few minutes past 1 p.m. So that is why 1 p.m. So do remember to join us on 6th December, Sunday at 1 p.m. And it is called, I think we are trying to remember, okay, here it is. It is being brought in here. 6 December ki Shaurya Gatha, Aankhon Dekhi. There will be an eyewitness as well. Do remember to join in. Of course, people in the US will not find it very convenient because that is night over there, but then you can always watch later on. So moving to the question and answer round now.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Okay, so Dheeraj is asking, Sanjay sir, missed your show on farm bills yesterday. Okay, with Mr. Malik. Okay, please let us know what are chances on percentage-wise would Modi government backtrack on the three bills the way they did on land acquisition bills in last term. Well, they didn't quite backtrack on the land acquisition bills because land acquisition bills never got passed. They didn't have strength in Rajya Sabha. These bills have been passed, so there is no question of backtracking. So that is the short answer to that. Of course, this is not exactly related to this show, but then farm bills have been passed. They have become act, and nobody is going to for repealing an act. You have to go back to the parliament. Just imagine what will happen to the government if it goes back on that, and because the people who are opposing do not form even 1% of the farming community. We know that. So there's no question of going back. Of course, there'll be a temporary nuisance sometime. They want to provoke some kind of a confrontation so that the government has blood on its hand, and then they can encash that. And that is typically the Congress strategy of scorched earth policy. That's what they are attempting, and I think the government is wise to that. विभूति जी प्रणाम, पार्थ सारथी। आप बैंकर हैं, किंतु आपकी बात में एक अलग प्रकार की सच्चाई अनुभूति होती है। आपका तथ्य विश्लेषण भी बहुत अच्छा रहता है। हमारी ज्ञान वृद्धि के लिए धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू, धन्यवाद पार्थ जी।
ये तो आपकी तारीफ है, प्रश्न नहीं है। Okay, Poonam Abhi. If Brahmin Privilege Rescue Act for Student Debt Relief Act is a problem, why does this Frenchman not change it to Taliban Privilege Rescue Act?
Thank you. Good comment, Poonam ji. Thank you.
A very good comment, very interesting. The next one, Abhishek Tripathi from Ireland. Okay. Why OPEC mentioned Kashmir this point at this point? Biden effect. Are you saying OPEC or are you saying OIC?
Oh, yeah. I think he's talking about Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC. Yeah, OIC. Yeah. No, it is not Biden effect. I don't think it is Biden effect. It is, some amount of Pakistan persuasion effect. That's simple as that. So we need not take it so seriously, because OIC has been a platform which has constantly been an irritant of sorts to India, and India knows how to deal with them. So I'm not worried about that.
If I may just add, OIC is an ineffective and effete body, and it is just a talking shop. Even the most powerful country there, Saudi Arabia, even they don't take it seriously. Yeah. And what they do is they just make routine noises, and it really has no bearing on anyone. So I think India has been dealing with it, as Vibhuti ji said, and they will keep dealing with it. No problem. Deepak Guruji. Sir, American businessmen like Gordon Miller aren't aware about our reforms, infrastructure development, and don't want to invest. Your comments, please.
As I said, for this question is important, because this brings me back to my assertion. My assertion is that we have failed to market ourselves in this part of the world, and unless and until if the entire economic liberalization thing was, people like us, I take pride in saying that people like us belong to a few good men who took this initiative forward. We were brought in here to do that. And majority of the Indian government effort was not strong in marketing. Remember one thing, we Indians are very good at many things, but one thing that we don't know is the art of marketing. It's not selling, it's art of marketing. It's about positioning, it's about branding. We miss that out. And of course, now this situation is different. Between 1991 to now, India doesn't need to be sold. That's the important part. India is already very well regarded. We have to tell the world, come and this is what we can do. And unless and until I mentioned to you about 3-4 other areas, the intellectual property, investment barriers. So what do you want? I'm used to certain lifestyle here. So when people ask me, if you return to India, what will you miss the most? I said, I will miss the freedom and the pleasure of driving. If I go back to India, rest of it I will not miss. But then there are many people who will not be able to handle situations in India as they go. हम Indian हैं, हम नहीं सुधरेंगे, न बदलेंगे. That attitude we have to change as well. So I think we need to market ourselves. We need to bring about effective change.
Okay, next question, Krishna Sundar. With Biden's national mask mandate proposal, do you think the US can expect a medical martial law?
I mean, even the national mask mandate will not be a law because it will violate the states and federal responsibility that they can't pass an act like that unless they declare a federal emergency. There is one of the beautiful things about America is that people respond in their own self-interest. So when I take my dog for a walk, for that matter, I carry the mask in my pocket. If I see people, I wear them. Otherwise, I don't. But people have become aware of it. So basically, it is a preventive part of it. It will not be a medical martial law. Fortunately, the vaccines have come. UK today has announced the trials of that, usage of that. And in America, is going to happen very soon too. So vaccines have arrived. So we are seeing good tidings on that account.
Okay. Harshad is asking, will Biden help Pak to stop itself from disintegrating?
I definitely respect your wish. Pakistan disintegrates. Biden will not do anything about that. He will have no role to play about that.
Okay, next one. Krishna Sundarji, will biopirate Bill Gates? Biopirate.
That's a new
Bill
one.
Gates. That's a new one. Use COVID vaccine as a mask to test other unapproved drugs on Indian children like he did with polio vaccines.
I hope not. I pray not. And if they make an effort, India should be prepared to take action against Bill Gates, regardless of how rich or how big he is. That's what I have been maintaining, that stand, that you are welcome to try, but if you are misleading us and if you're doing bogus things, then you prosecute, you take action, you throw them out, cancel their passport, don't let them come in here. There is no point in sitting and crying about it. उन्होंने ऐसा कर दिया, हमने उनको ऐसा करने क्यों दिया? That's the सवाल हमें पूछना है. कोई भी हमारे साथ कुछ करता है तो हम अलाउ करते हैं तभी. अगर हमने उनको अलाउ नहीं किया तो वो नहीं कर सकते हैं कुछ भी. Why don't we stop them?
Correct. Okay, this question is, please comment on H1B future and CPEC during Biden. Also, please have a session with Abhijit and Vibhuti ji. Okay, that's a good suggestion. Why not? Let me ask Abhijit.
Right. H1B future would be better. It was not worse in Trump's rule. Trump could not impose or could not bring about the changes that he wanted, the performance-based immigration. Biden will definitely regularize. He has already promised, if the reports are correct, he has said that he will regularize 11 million illegals. If he is going to regularize 11 million illegal residents in this country, migrants in the country, then he has to automatically do something about H1B. So I would put it this way, that Indians do not, other than the pleasure of working and living in America, they don't need to worry about coming to America anymore. Have pride. Do things from India. Lay down the terms and conditions to Americans. Send the job back, pay me dollar salaries. Don't accept rupee salaries. Accept dollar salaries. Work in from India, because now look at this technology. We are having a live chat, 2 different time zones, and which is going global. So we live in a different world now, and we have to take advantage of that. We need not become begging for an H1 visa. I'm of that mindset.
Yes. And in fact, I must say that this is not the politically correct thing to say, but Corona taught the Jaipur dialogues a lot, and we learned well, and as a result, we did well. So every situation is not always negative. A negative situation can yield you positive results too. So that's all for this Wednesday session. And until next Wednesday, we have to say goodbye to Vibhuti ji. Thank you very much for all your insights. And thank you to viewers. And once again, do not forget to like, subscribe, share, press the bell icon, and Patram Pushpam. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. It was good fun.
Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.